Chapter 3, Section 5. We were all standing in the doorway. It was the moment when hosts and guests hurriedly exchange the last and most cordial words, and then part to their mutual gratification. "The reason he's so cross to‐day," Liputin dropped all at once, as it were casually, when he was just going out of the room, "is because he had a disturbance to‐day with Captain Lebyadkin over his sister. Captain Lebyadkin thrashes that precious sister of his, the mad girl, every day with a whip, a real Cossack whip, every morning and evening. So Alexey Nilitch has positively taken the lodge so as not to be present. Well, good bye." "A sister? An invalid? With a whip?" Stepan Trofimovitch cried out as though he had suddenly been lashed with a whip himself. "What sister? What Lebyadkin?" All his former terror came back in an instant. "Lebyadkin? Oh, that's the retired captain. He used only to call himself a lieutenant before." "Oh, what is his rank to me? What sister? Good heavens! You say Lebyadkin? But there used to be a Lebyadkin here." "That's the very man, our Lebyadkin, at Virginsky's, you remember?" "But he was caught with forged papers?" "Well, now he's come back. He's been here almost 3 weeks, and under the most peculiar circumstances." "Why, but he's a scoundrel!" "As though no one could be a scoundrel among us!" Liputin grinned suddenly, his knavish little eyes seeming to peer into Stepan Trofimovitch's soul. "Good heavens! I didn't mean that at all, though I quite agree with you about that, with you particularly. But what then, what then? What did you mean by that? You certainly meant something by that." "Why, it's all so trivial. This captain to all appearances went away from us at that time, not because of the forged papers, but simply to look for his sister, who was in hiding from him somewhere, it seems. Well, and now he's brought her, and that's the whole story. Why do you seem frightened, Stepan Trofimovitch? I only tell this from his drunken chatter, though, he doesn't speak of it himself when he's sober. He's an irritable man, and, so to speak, æsthetic in a military style. Only he has bad taste. And this sister is lame as well as mad. She seems to have been seduced by someone, and Mr. Lebyadkin has, it seems, for many years received a yearly grant from the seducer by way of compensation for the wound to his honour. So it would seem at least from his chatter, though I believe it's only drunken talk. It's simply his brag. Besides, that sort of thing is done much cheaper. But that he has a sum of money is perfectly certain. 10 days ago he was walking barefoot, and now I've seen hundreds in his hands. His sister has fits of some sort every day. She shrieks, and he keeps her in order with the whip. 'You must inspire a woman with respect,' he says. What I can't understand is how Shatov goes on living above him. Alexey Nilitch has only been 3 days with them. They were acquainted in Petersburg, and now he's taken the lodge to get away from the disturbance." "Is this all true?" said Stepan Trofimovitch, addressing the engineer. "You do gossip a lot, Liputin," the latter muttered wrathfully. "Mysteries, secrets! Where have all these mysteries and secrets among us sprung from?" Stepan Trofimovitch could not refrain from exclaiming. The engineer frowned, flushed red, shrugged his shoulders, and went out of the room. "Alexey Nilitch positively snatched the whip out of his hand, broke it, and threw it out of the window, and they had a violent quarrel," added Liputin. "Why are you chattering, Liputin? It's stupid. What for?" Alexey Nilitch turned again instantly. "Why be so modest and conceal the generous impulses of one's soul, that is, of your soul, I'm not speaking of my own." "How stupid it is, and quite unnecessary. Lebyadkin's stupid and quite worthless and no use to the cause and utterly mischievous. Why do you keep babbling all sorts of things? I'm going." "Oh, what a pity!" cried Liputin with a candid smile, "or I'd have amused you with another little story, Stepan Trofimovitch. I came, indeed, on purpose to tell you, though I dare say you've heard it already. Well, till another time. Alexey Nilitch is in such a hurry. Good bye for the present. The story concerns Varvara Petrovna. She amused me the day before yesterday. She sent for me on purpose. It's simply killing. Good bye." But at this point Stepan Trofimovitch absolutely would not let him go. He seized him by the shoulders, turned him sharply back into the room, and sat him down in a chair. Liputin was positively scared. "Why, to be sure," he began, looking warily at Stepan Trofimovitch from his chair. "She suddenly sent for me and asked me confidentially my private opinion, whether Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch is mad or in his right mind. Isn't that astonishing?" "You're out of your mind," muttered Stepan Trofimovitch, and suddenly, as though he were beside himself, "Liputin, you know perfectly well that you only came here to tell me something insulting of that sort, and... something worse." In a flash I recalled his conjecture that Liputin knew not only more than we did about our affair, but something else which we should never know. "Upon my word, Stepan Trofimovitch," muttered Liputin, seeming greatly alarmed, "upon my word." "Hold your tongue and begin. I beg you, Mr. Kirillov, to come back too and be present. I earnestly beg you. Sit down, and you, Liputin, begin directly, simply, and without any excuses." "If I had only known it would upset you so much I wouldn't have begun at all. And of course I thought you knew all about it from Varvara Petrovna herself." "You didn't think that at all. Begin, begin, I tell you." "Only do me the favour to sit down yourself, or how can I sit here when you are running about before me in such excitement? I can't speak coherently." Stepan Trofimovitch restrained himself and sank impressively into an easy chair. The engineer stared gloomily at the floor. Liputin looked at them with intense enjoyment. "How am I to begin? I'm too overwhelmed." Section 6. The day before yesterday a servant was suddenly sent to me. "You are asked to call at 12 o'clock," said he. Can you fancy such a thing? I threw aside my work and precisely at midday yesterday I was ringing at the bell. I was let into the drawing room. I waited a minute. She came in. She made me sit down and sat down herself, opposite. I sat down and I couldn't believe it. You know how she has always treated me. She began at once without beating about the bush. You know her way. "You remember," she said, "that 4 years ago, when Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch was ill, he did some strange things which made all the town wonder, till the position was explained. One of those actions concerned you personally. When Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch recovered, he went at my request to call on you. I know that he talked to you several times before, too. Tell me openly and candidly what you..." She faltered a little at this point. "What you thought of Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch then. What was your view of him altogether? What idea you were able to form of him at that time, and still have?" Here she was completely confused, so that she paused for a whole minute, and suddenly flushed. I was alarmed. She began again. "Touchingly" is not quite the word, it's not applicable to her, but in a very impressive tone. "I want you," she said, "to understand me clearly and without mistake. I've sent for you now because I look upon you as a keen-sighted and quick-witted man, qualified to make accurate observations." What compliments! "You'll understand too," she said, "that I am a mother appealing to you. Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch has suffered some calamities and has passed through many changes of fortune in his life. All that," she said, "might well have affected the state of his mind. I'm not speaking of madness, of course," she said. "That's quite out of the question." This was uttered proudly and resolutely. "But there might be something strange, something peculiar, some turn of thought, a tendency to some particular way of looking at things." Those were her exact words, and I admired, Stepan Trofimovitch, the exactness with which Varvara Petrovna can put things. She's a lady of superior intellect. "I have noticed in him anyway," she said, "a perpetual restlessness and a tendency to peculiar impulses. But I am a mother, and you are an impartial spectator, and therefore qualified with your intelligence to form a more impartial opinion. I implore you, in fact" yes, that word "implore" was uttered "to tell me the whole truth, without mincing matters. And if you will give me your word never to forget that I have spoken to you in confidence, you may reckon upon my always being ready to seize every opportunity in the future to show my gratitude." "Well, what do you say to that?" "You have so amazed me," faltered Stepan Trofimovitch, "that I don't believe you." "Yes, observe, observe," cried Liputin, as though he had not heard Stepan Trofimovitch. "Observe what must be her agitation and uneasiness if she stoops from her grandeur to appeal to a man like me, and even condescends to beg me to keep it secret. What do you call that? Hasn't she received some news of Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch, something unexpected?" "I don't know of news of any sort. I haven't seen her for some days, but..." "But I must say," lisped Stepan Trofimovitch, evidently hardly able to think clearly, "but I must say, Liputin, that if it was said to you in confidence, and here you're telling it before every one..." "Absolutely in confidence. But God strike me dead if I... But as for telling it here, what does it matter? Are we strangers, even Alexey Nilitch?" "I don't share that attitude. No doubt we three here will keep the secret, but I'm afraid of the fourth, you, and wouldn't trust you in anything." "What do you mean by that? Why, it's more to my interest than anyone's, seeing I was promised eternal gratitude. What I wanted was to point out in this connection one extremely strange incident, rather to say psychological than simply strange. Yesterday evening, under the influence of my conversation with Varvara Petrovna you can fancy yourself what an impression it made on me I approached Alexey Nilitch with a discreet question. 'You knew Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch abroad,' said I, 'and used to know him before in Petersburg too. What do you think of his mind and his abilities?' said I. He answered laconically, as his way is, that he was a man of subtle intellect and sound judgment. 'And have you never noticed in the course of years,' said I, 'any turn of ideas or peculiar way of looking at things, or any, so to say, insanity?' In fact, I repeated Varvara Petrovna's own question, and would you believe it, Alexey Nilitch suddenly grew thoughtful and scowled, just as he's doing now. 'Yes,' said he, 'I have sometimes thought there was something strange.' Take note, too, that if anything could have seemed strange even to Alexey Nilitch, it must really have been something, mustn't it?" "Is that true?" said Stepan Trofimovitch, turning to Alexey Nilitch. "I should prefer not to speak of it," answered Alexey Nilitch, suddenly raising his head and looking at him with flashing eyes. "I wish to contest your right to do this, Liputin. You've no right to drag me into this. I did not give my whole opinion at all. Though I knew Nikolay Stavrogin in Petersburg, that was long ago, and though I've met him since, I know him very little. I beg you to leave me out and... All this is something like scandal." Liputin threw up his hands with an air of oppressed innocence. "A scandalmonger? Why not say a spy while you're about it? It's all very well for you, Alexey Nilitch, to criticise when you stand aloof from everything. But you wouldn't believe it, Stepan Trofimovitch. Take Captain Lebyadkin, he is stupid enough, one may say. In fact, one's ashamed to say how stupid he is. There is a Russian comparison to signify the degree of it. And do you know, he considers himself injured by Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch, though he is full of admiration for his wit. 'I'm amazed,' said he, at that man. 'He's a subtle serpent,' his own words. And I said to him, still under the influence of my conversation, and after I had spoken to Alexey Nilitch, 'What do you think, captain, is your subtle serpent mad or not?' Would you believe it, it was just as if I'd given him a sudden lash from behind. He suddenly leapt up from his seat. 'Yes,' said he, 'yes, only that,' he said, 'cannot affect.' 'Affect what?' He didn't finish. Yes, and then he fell to thinking so bitterly, thinking so much, that his drunkenness dropped off him. We were sitting in Filipov's restaurant, and it wasn't till half an hour later that he suddenly struck the table with his fist. 'Yes,' said he, 'maybe he's mad, but that can't affect it.' Again he didn't say what it couldn't affect. Of course, I'm only giving you an extract of the conversation, but one can understand the sense of it. You may ask whom you like, they all have the same idea in their heads, though it never entered anyone's head before. 'Yes,' they say, 'he's mad. He's very clever, but perhaps he's mad too.'" Stepan Trofimovitch sat pondering and thought intently. "And how does Lebyadkin know?" "Do you mind inquiring that of Alexey Nilitch, who has just called me a spy? I'm a spy, yet I don't know, but Alexey Nilitch knows all the ins and outs of it, and holds his tongue." "I know nothing about it, or hardly anything," answered the engineer with the same irritation. "You make Lebyadkin drunk to find out. You brought me here to find out and to make me say. And so you must be a spy." "I haven't made him drunk yet, and he's not worth the money either, with all his secrets. They are not worth that to me. I don't know what they are to you. On the contrary, he is scattering the money, though 12 days ago he begged 15 kopecks of me, and it's he treats me to champagne, not I him. But you've given me an idea, and if there should be occasion I will make him drunk, just to get to the bottom of it, and maybe I shall find out. All your little secrets." Liputin snapped back spitefully. Stepan Trofimovitch looked in bewilderment at the two disputants. Both were giving themselves away, and what's more, were not standing on ceremony. The thought crossed my mind that Liputin had brought this Alexey Nilitch to us with the simple object of drawing him into a conversation through a third person for purposes of his own, his favourite manoeuvre. "Alexey Nilitch knows Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch quite well," he went on irritably, "only he conceals it. And as to your question about Captain Lebyadkin, he made his acquaintance before any of us did, 6 years ago in Petersburg, in that obscure, if one may so express it, epoch in the life of Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch, before he had dreamed of rejoicing our hearts by coming here. Our prince, one must conclude, surrounded himself with rather a queer selection of acquaintances. It was at that time, it seems, that he made acquaintance with this gentleman here." "Take care, Liputin. I warn you Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch meant to be here soon himself, and he knows how to defend himself." "Why warn me? I am the first to cry out that he is a man of the most subtle and refined intelligence, and I quite reassured Varvara Petrovna yesterday on that score. 'It's his character,' I said to her, 'that I can't answer for.' Lebyadkin said the same thing yesterday. 'A lot of harm has come to me from his character,' he said. 'Stepan Trofimovitch, it's all very well for you to cry out about slander and spying, and at the very time observe that you wring it all out of me, and with such immense curiosity too. Now Varvara Petrovna went straight to the point yesterday. "You have had a personal interest in the business," she said. "That's why I appeal to you." I should say so. What need to look for motives when I've swallowed a personal insult from his Excellency before the whole society of the place? I should think I have grounds to be interested, not merely for the sake of gossip. He shakes hands with you one day, and next day, for no earthly reason, he returns your hospitality by slapping you on the cheeks in the face of all decent society if the fancy takes him, out of sheer wantonness. And what's more, the fair sex is everything for them, these butterflies and meddlesome cocks. Grand gentlemen with little wings like the ancient Cupids, lady-killing Petchorins. It's all very well for you, Stepan Trofimovitch, a confirmed bachelor, to talk like that, stick up for his Excellency and call me a slanderer, but if you married a pretty young wife, as you're still such a fine fellow, then I dare say you'd bolt your door against our prince, and throw up barricades in your house. Why, if only that Mademoiselle Lebyadkin, who is thrashed with a whip, were not mad and bandy-legged, by Jove, I should fancy she was the victim of the passions of our general, and that it was from him that Captain Lebyadkin had suffered in his family dignity, as he expresses it himself. Only perhaps that is inconsistent with his refined taste, though indeed even that's no hindrance to him. Every berry is worth picking if only he's in the mood for it. You talk of slander, but I'm not crying this aloud, though the whole town is ringing with it. I only listen and assent. That's not prohibited." "The town's ringing with it? What's the town ringing with?" "That is, Captain Lebyadkin is shouting for all the town to hear." "And isn't that just the same as the market-place ringing with it? How am I to blame? I interest myself in it only among friends, for after all, I consider myself among friends here." He looked at us with an innocent air. "Something's happened. Only consider, they say his Excellency has sent 300 roubles from Switzerland by a most honourable young lady, and so to say modest orphan, whom I have the honour of knowing, to be handed over to Captain Lebyadkin. And Lebyadkin, a little later, was told as an absolute fact also by a very honourable and therefore trustworthy person, I won't say whom, that not 300 but 1,000 roubles had been sent. And so Lebyadkin keeps crying out, 'The young lady has grabbed 700 roubles belonging to me,' and he's almost ready to call in the police. He threatens to, anyway, and he's making an uproar all over the town." "This is vile, vile of you!" cried the engineer, leaping up suddenly from his chair. "But I say, you are yourself the honourable person who brought word to Lebyadkin from Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch that 1,000 roubles were sent, not 300. Why, the captain told me so himself when he was drunk. It's an unhappy misunderstanding. Someone's made a mistake and it's led to... It's nonsense, and it's base of you." but I'm ready to believe that it's nonsense, and I'm distressed at the story. For take it as you will, a girl of an honourable reputation is implicated first over the 700 roubles, and secondly in unmistakable intimacy with Nikolay Vsyevolodovitch. For how much does it mean to his Excellency to disgrace a girl of good character, or put to shame another man's wife, like that incident with me? If he comes across a generous-hearted man, he'll force him to cover the sins of others under the shelter of his honourable name. That's just what I had to put up with. I'm speaking of myself." "Be careful, Liputin." Stepan Trofimovitch got up from his easy chair and turned pale. "Don't believe it, don't believe it! Somebody has made a mistake, and Lebyadkin's drunk," exclaimed the engineer, in indescribable excitement. "It will all be explained, but I can't, and I think it's low, and... That's enough, enough!" He ran out of the room. "What are you about? Why, I'm going with you!" cried Liputin, startled. He jumped up and ran after Alexey Nilitch. Chapter 4.